Alright, so the first area we're going to go through is optimization, and this is broken further down into 3 different sections, and they are device responsive, load performance test, and functionality testing. So I'll be going through each one of these in a little bit more detail. Okay, so the first one is device responsive. So what does this mean? This simply means that does your website look good on multiple devices? So as you can see on the screen here, we've got different variety of screens. So we've got a big iMac screen, we've got a laptop, we've got a tablet, and we've got a mobile phone. And so when we talk about responsive websites, we mean that the website looks like the website on a desktop. It shrinks down and stacks on a smaller device size, like a mobile, for example. So it's the exact same content, everything that you'll find on a desktop, but it's kind of squashed down and everything stacked. So if there's images side by side on a mobile, they'll be stacked on top of each other. So it's really quite simple like that. So grab your phone out now and pull up your website and make sure that it is mobile responsive. Now the stats around mobile responsiveness or mobile usage is huge. Over 60% of mobile users will be using their mobile to find what they're looking for. Okay, so that's a huge number. So you need to make sure that your website looks good, functions well on mobile devices. Okay, so have a look at how your website looks on your mobile phone, and if there's anything that doesn't look right, so images are being squashed too much, or they're or half of them are hanging off the side of the screen, you can't see them. You know, if you've got a massive problem if you have to pinch and zoom in to like read your content, that just means that your site is not mobile responsive. Yes, there are still websites out there that are not mobile responsive, and it would simply mean that people who are visiting those sites would just leave. Okay, so you don't want your particular target market to come to your website and then leave. So that's what we mean by device responsive. So have a look on multiple devices to make sure that your website is looking good and functioning correctly. There's a really great website you can also check to see what your website looks like on multiple devices. So if you go to mi.responsivedesign.is, and that will show you a website where you can just type in your domain name, and then it will render a visual of what your website will look like on multiple devices, similar to the screen that you're looking at now. So go away, have a look at your site, make sure that it's mobile responsive. If it isn't, reach out to your developer and ask them the question of why it isn't, or you may need to get it optimized. Okay, great, excellent. We're moving on. So the next area is really important. This is super important now, more so now than anything, because this is now a ranking factor for Google. Okay, so if you want to rank well in Google, then this is a really important thing. So what is it? So load performance testing. Okay, so when we talk about load performance, we talk about the speed of how fast your website loads. Now there's a lot of factors that go into this, probably more than I could go through in this video, but the point of it is that you need to have a look at how fast your website is loading and make changes where necessary. Okay, so there's some really cool tools out there that we use to look at load speeds. And these are really quite popular. So in the very top left hand corner you will see one called Pingdom. So if you go to tools.pingdom.com, type in your URL or your website address, and then you can select the test from. So if you're in Australia, select an Australian location. I think Melbourne's in there, and wherever you are in the world, just test where the nearest location is, and then just click on Start Test, and that will give you a report on how fast your website is loading and what assets are loading on your website as well. And then it gives you ideas on what you need to do to ensure that your website will load faster. Okay, so one of the biggest factors in load performance and the lack of speed is image optimization. Okay, so sometimes an image will be really large in file size, so that has to download from the server, and that can take a long time. So if you've got several images on the site that are not optimized for websites, then it's going to really slow down your website and really bug people who are visiting, and then they'll just leave, and or they'll bounce off and they'll go to your competitor who probably might have a faster website. So we don't want that. We don't want to lose our leads or target market when they come to our site. So the other tool is GTmetrix, which is at the lower right hand side of the screen, gtmetrix.com. Again, you can just put in your website address and hit analyze, and it will scan and give you the results and also suggestions on how to speed up your website. Okay, so really handy tools, really great tools for you to check it out. Again, if you're noticing slow load speeds on your website, then these tools are really must to have a go and look at. So the stats around load speeds, okay, so you really want to have your website loading less than 4 seconds. And now every page on your website can tend to load a little bit slower depending on what you're running. You might have an e-commerce website, for example, with a page full of product images, and then that may load pretty slowly because you might have a lot of images or a lot of products displayed on that page, and they all have to load. So if that's the case, then you may, and you want all those images to display, then you may have to look at your hosting. So yes, you might need to look at moving up to a different host provider to provide additional resources for your website. So there are different variety of hosts out there. So you generally start off on a shared server, which is the cheap ones where you pay the $6 a month, and that's fine when you're just starting out. But when you're starting to get traffic and you're wanting to convert a lot more of that traffic into sales and leads, then you're going to have a robust website solution that will provide ample resources for your website visitors. Hosting is one big aspect of that. Another area that you can help to improve performance is using a service called Cloudflare. So Cloudflare is like a CDN, which means Content Delivery Network. So what it does, it will literally kind of take a cached copy of your website. Doesn't copy like the files, but it just takes a cache copy of your site, turns everything into static pages. What I mean by static pages is it just takes a photocopy of your website, and then it mirrors your website on many different servers around the world. So if you're looking at a website here in Australia, they've got a Brisbane server, so they've got several servers in Australia. So it will basically load that version of the site from the nearest server to you. Okay, so that dramatically increases the load speed performance of your website as well. So just to recap on this particular area, so if you're finding that your website's slow to load, more than 10 seconds or whatever, so check out these tools to see why that's happening. And have a look at things like your images, your image sizes. When I say image sizes, I mean the file sizes, because remember, if you're uploading a 1 megabyte file, that's quite large. That has to download to a browser, a computer, and that can take quite a long time. So optimizing images is really important. On my document checklist, you will see a bit.ly link. So if you follow that link, you will see a video that I've done that goes over how to optimize images prior to uploading them to your website. So the second area is checking your hosting to see if your hosting is good enough for your website. You may have outgrown it, so you may need to move to a more resource-friendly hosting supplier. And thirdly, setting up your website through Cloudflare for faster load speeds as well. Okay, so let's jump onto the next section, which is functionality testing. So what I mean by this area is that what we found in managing multiple websites is that our clients don't actually test their functionality on a regular basis to make sure that everything works. So it's either their customers that have to come and tell them that, hey, the contact form's not working, or a page is broken, or a link's broken, or, like I'm going through shopping cart and it doesn't take my credit card, that sort of stuff. So I really encourage you to continuously put into a schedule where you're going to test the functionality of your website. Just simply go to your website and check everything. So let's go over a few areas. So the first one is checking contact lead generation or login forms. Okay, so making sure that your contact page form works. So, you could be getting all these leads coming to your website, and they could be filling out the form to contact you, or they could be filling out a lead generation form, but you don't know about it because they might be getting lost because the forms aren't working. So it's always really best to test these things on a regular basis. Every probably 2 to 3 weeks, just jump in and send yourself a contact form test, just to ensure that it's all working. Sign up for your latest offering or newsletter, just to make sure that works and that you're receiving the emails. And if you've got some sort of membership site or something where people log in, just create an account for yourself and make sure that the whole login process works, because 9 times out of 10 your users probably aren't going to be telling you this stuff. They're just going to be leaving, and worst cases they'll just go and find somebody else that their contact form does work. Or you could be getting leads or questions and you don't know about it because you're not getting them. So you could be losing out on massive opportunity. So that's one area that I really encourage you to check. In fact, check it now. And the second area is like e-commerce checkout. So yeah, again, checking the flow of your checkout and making sure that it's error-free, that you can add things to the cart, and also just to see how the flow works, because a lot of people get these websites and expect everything to just work properly and everything, and then customers will start pouring in and hand over their money and buy your products and services. But if you don't know how they're going to go through the process, then it makes it really hard for you to really understand what your users are going through, and your customers potentially will go through as well. So go through it yourself. Make sure that it works. Make sure that it's quick and easy and as simple as possible. And if it isn't, then seek your developer to work out ways to make things more streamlined on that process. And then finally, the last area is check for broken links. Broken links are essentially like maybe you've had a page on your website that you've removed, and that link is still live in the wild. So you might have something up on Facebook pointing back to that page. Then of course that link's not going to work anymore. So it's going to show a 404 page or a page not found error or something like that, and that can really annoy people. And it can also really annoy Google, because Google looks at this sort of stuff and says, well, this website has a lot of broken page links, so therefore it's not very valuable. It's going to lead more and more people to leave the site and not stay around. So it's really important that you check for broken links. And if you do remove a page from your website, then make sure that you set up a redirect. Now, depending on what platform you're using, whether it's WordPress or Joomla or Drupal or other platforms, I know with WordPress is that you can just get a plugin called redirection and then just set up a redirect link really simply. And then other platforms, you might be able to do the same as well. So just check your platform documentation to help you with that. But these things are really important to check. Your contact form, your e-commerce checkout if you have a store, and checking for broken links. So that ends this particular section. So we're going to be moving on to the next section now.